My name is Jacob Herzog, and my wife Casey and I have been coming to Northside now for 3.5 years. My wife and I give because it's an act of obedience to Christ. We believe that we are blessed, not so that we can have more, but so that we can bless others. We're excited to give to the Generous Project and participate with Northside in this ministry. It's about connecting people to Christ and one another, and when you break it down to that, that's something that I think everybody can get behind. Yeah, the Generous Project really excites me because we're going to be able to just really increase the traffic flow and the space that we're going to be able to utilize to teach others. We're going to be able to relieve some of these growing pains that we're having and just really be able to welcome more people and just help people connect to Christ and one another.
Kevin just started throwing numbers out without any foundation that I knew of because he'd been thinking about it so long. We had to have an actual sit-down business meeting. What are our ideas? How could we increase our income, cut our expenses? How high do we want to shoot with this number?
We also talked about selling things on Facebook, downsizing stuff in our house that we don't use or don't need, cutting entertainment options. One of the things I suggested was, since I don't work on Fridays or Saturdays, I kind of threw out, well, I can mow yards over the summer and the fall and spring, and that could bring in some extra income that we could just donate to the Generous Project, to which Allison said, well, or I could pick up a couple of extra days of work and I could make way more money than you can just mowing yards. And she had me there. So I'll probably stay home and watch kids so she can work a few extra days and just help donate that money to the Generous Project.
Well, and we landed at one number and felt pretty good about it, but we were still praying, still thinking through, what are the needs? How big is the commitment going to need to be from the church body to make this really work? And we looked at that number and prayed about it and just felt the leading that it needed to be a bigger number.
Yeah, and so we started at one number, and then we actually increased it by 50%. And when we got to that number, it was a little uneasy because the math didn't necessarily work out at that point in time. But there was a sense at which we were both at peace with it. We both felt like this is what God has called us to give, and He's going to provide the resources, He's going to provide the opportunities. Yes, it's going to require sacrifice on our part, but we believe that this is what God wants us to give.
I'm Ed Holt.
And I'm Sarah Holt.
And we served together as lead ministers here at Northside for 26 years. During that period of time, we went through 5 building projects, the last being that of moving to this new property here at our new location where we are presently. We decided that we not only wanted to give from our regular income, but we wanted to give from our assets as well. And so we dedicated 3 of our houses, our rental houses, to be given to the church at the time of our death. We wanted to see the blessing of our giving, however, and one of those houses was sold, and we've since given those finances to the church. We recently, this past year, were able to give another house to the church to be sold by the church. And we did that because it was beneficial to the church in this new Generous Project, but also because it was very beneficial to us financially in regard to taxes. One of the good ways to give is by appreciating assets on which you would normally pay taxes, but by giving to the church, you avoid that taxation that takes place. Since we were able to fund our own retirement, we were able to do some other things after we stepped out of the lead role here at Northside. After staying at home for about a year doing some remodeling, I decided I needed to do some building to get out of the house for a while, and
I decided that was a good idea.
She decided that was a good idea for me to be outside of the house as well. And so over the past 9 years, we've built about 30 homes. But Sarah and I made a choice before we started building, and that was the fact that we knew that we were already living comfortably and that we should not use this money for ourselves. This actually became the basis for us to be able to be generous with other people and with the work of God's kingdom as well. I would encourage you to consider the possibility as we enter this Generous Project of looking for other ways to earn money that will not necessarily improve your standard of living, but rather allows you to be generous with God. We've experienced in our life that God is incredibly generous with those who are generous. There is a joy in giving, there is an excitement in giving when you see how that giving changes other people's lives and when you see how it blesses your life as well. Obviously, my role at Northside has changed since I'm no longer the lead minister, and I've not been quite as involved as I was when we relocated to this property. However, I've always had complete confidence in our church leadership. I know that they have studied, they have projected growth, and I know that one of the things that can keep a church from growing is the growth inhibiting factor of a lack of space. I know that we are bursting at the seams in our lobby area. I know that we're bursting at the seams in our youth area as well. And I know that there are some Sundays when it gets crowded in our 9 o'clock service, which I attend. In fact, sometimes some of those new people come and try to get my seat, and it really doesn't aggravate me. I'm excited to see them, but that's an exciting problem to have. But it is a problem, and I trust that the church leadership and leading through this will take us where we need to be, where we can grow in the future, in the next 10 years, in the same way that we have grown during the last 10 years.
You know, as Kim and I have been thinking about what we're going to do for this generous project, I reflect back on the fact that every time we've been a part of a faith-stretching initiative like what we're in right now with this generous project, it's led to several things for us. First of all, excitement. We get excited about what God's doing. It leads to sacrifice. There's a cost to what we're going to do and sacrificing for that, which then leads to fear about how it's all going to work out, fear for how all the numbers are going to work out when they don't totally align. That's faith. And it leads to faith. But then I also think during moments like this, faith-stretching initiative, it also leads to blessing. The blessing of seeing how God provides for us, how He takes care of our needs, and how the church thrives through that. And so every time we've been a part of this, God's provided for us.
Yeah, in fact, several years ago when we were discussing giving to an expansion project at Northside, God just provided me with a job working 1 day a week, and it was just perfect timing for that extra income to help us meet that new commitment that we were making.
Yeah, so this time around, as we thought about what we can do, here's some of the things that we're processing that we're committing to do. First of all, we've given faithfully to retirement ever since we started early in this process of married life. But we've determined that we're actually putting our retirement on hold for 3 years as we're going to be giving that to this project. We're also putting off a couple major purchases that we could have made, and we're just going to pray that God would sustain the life of those things, part of a faith stretch. We're also putting off just some home projects that we were going to do inside our home, and we'll just push those further down the road. And we're just committing to give this on top of our normal tithes and offerings and other commitments too, like to Maranatha Bible Camp. We've made a commitment to them and sponsor child and things like that. But we're committed to that project and excited to see how God can use that.
And I just feel like the faith stretching process for us has already begun, because a couple months ago when we started talking about all of this, we just started getting hit with one thing after another of increased expenses or unannounced expenses, and major car repairs, even a couple of medical situations, and it was frustrating. And we just decided that we're going to make this commitment anyway, and we're going to trust God to provide through it.
Yep. So that could happen to you too, in the process of determining what to do. But it was even during that process that we actually increased our original thought of what we would give by about 33%. So that's what faith can do and how God stretches us, and some of the ways we're going to commit to this. We're actually excited about what God is going to do through this, and that we get to be a part of it. And we're excited that you're going to be a part of this too.
I think probably one of the things that helped us most in understanding generosity was our 10-year ministry that took place in Chile. And I know that affected you as well.
We were 20 years old, a little over 20 years old, when we went to Chile, and we thought we'd teach them how to be generous, but they in turn taught us how to be generous, because they had very little, but yet they gave very much. So it's kind of like the widow's mite. And so from that we learned that we needed to up our generosity.
We saw people who were making a tenth of what we made. We made a whopping salary of about $400 a month when we went, but we saw people who were making $40 and $50 a month who would bring whatever they could to help those who had greater need. I know that we still remember very clearly the time when we took a man home after an earthquake because many of the roads were closed, and this man was living in a shack with a dirt floor, which you don't see in Chile any longer. But they went out and they wanted to show their appreciation, their generosity, and so they killed the one chicken that they had to provide a meal for us. And I think the church, the people there have been blessed because they have understood that God blesses those who are generous.